Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. At least 235,000 people have fled Idlib since mid-December amid airstrikes by Russian-backed forces targeting Syria's last major rebel stronghold. The United Nations says the mass displacement has left southern Idlib almost empty. Despite an August ceasefire deal and calls for de-escalation, Russian and Syrian regime forces have pressed on with an assault in northwest Syria. Dozens of towns and villages have been seized and hundreds of people killed. The Syrian regime has vowed to recapture Idlib, but has denied claims of indiscriminate bombing on civilians. The latest escalation of violence has forced a new wave of refugee influx towards Turkey's border. But Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said his country cannot handle a further inflow of refugees and has warned that Europe will also feel the impact if the bombing is not stopped. And joining me now is Murat Aslan, who is an assistant professor of political science and international relations at Hasan Kalyoncu University, and Navvar Saban, who is a military analyst at OMRAN Center for Strategic Studies. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. So at least 235,000 people have been displaced from southern Idlib since mid-December, and 140,000 of them are children. And this newly displaced adds to the already 400,000 people displaced earlier. Navvar, what is happening in Idlib and why now?
Thank you for having me. First of all, it was obvious after the final round of Sochi that the Russians intend to conduct some kind of operation that bring for them a victory before the end of the year. They did not care about the civilian location. They did not care about the crisis that might happen. They wanted, basically, they announced that they want to accomplish the first agreement, which was the point of the first agreement in September 2018. They want to secure the international road. They want to evacuate the area from any kind of armory, and they want to get rid of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. But here is the interesting thing. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is part of the force that controlled the area. They did not receive any kind of massive hit. They did not announce any kind of big losses among them. Even some of the opposition faction, they did not received any kind of big destruction on their warehouses or headquarters. The only victim here from this massive campaign were the civilians. Yes. Either IDPs or death among civilians. And the situation is becoming even worse. Now the regime did not enter Maarat alNuman, but they took an area. Jarjanas is a very high area. Yeah. Basically, with a small weapon, they can target the Maarat alNuman area. So that's why Maarat alNuman, most of the people fled from Maarat alNuman.
Now it's a ghost town, I believe, right?
It's almost a ghost town. Only the western part of it, some people are living in it because they basically don't have a B plan or an option, or they don't want to leave their home in the winter to be living under the tent.
Yes. So winter conditions are also exacerbating in the dire humanitarian situation. Murat, tell us about the significance of this Maarat alNuman and Recep villages, which the regime has taken control of.
The town is located at the south of Idlib, as you know. And I think the most prominent issue for these two towns are their attitude towards the displaced persons when Assad regime attacked Aleppo, East Ghouta, because they hosted the displaced Syrians at their homes, refusing to build up a tent city. So after a while, we see that Assad regime now press these two towns and evacuate them from the region. And it's a kind of psychological, pressure upon the civilian minds, because Assad regime's intention is a bit favoring the military outcomes rather than civilian concerns currently.
So it also sits on a highway connecting Aleppo and the capital Damascus, so it's economically important for Assad regime. But tell me, since these towns are evacuated, who will come and live there?
And that's the issue. That's the issue. Assad regime is trying to establish a kind of zone for nobody. The strategy...
It's going to be an uninhabited place?
Yeah, because now take, for instance, Eastern Ghouta. the population over there had been evacuated and pushed up north, as you know.
Yes.
And now who is placed over there? So it's a kind of ethnic cleansing, forcing people to immigrate from the areas that are being inhabited and trying to build up a country with or upon a certain sect who are loyal to Assad regime. That's the essence of the policy of Assad regime.
So, Navvar, do you think this offensive will continue unabated? And what happens when they reach further north?
Basically, the Russian put a lot of effort in the ground. They do have some kind of manpower problem after like reallocating some of their forces in the eastern Euphrates, and also they lost a lot of casualties among their troops, the regime troops in northern Latakia attempts a few months ago. So basically now they control a very strategic location. They can like oversee the M4 international road, so they don't have exactly to go through M4 and control it right now, because they basically control it with the firearms. So they can put more pressure on the civilian, which will put more pressure on the Turkish side to find some kind of solution for the whole area. Basically, the Russian final goal is to secure the southern part under Ariha, which is Maarat alNuman. They need to connect Maarat alNuman with Aleppo city or El Hader, southern Aleppo. So their main target, if we're going to talk about their main goal, it's going to be Maarat alNuman, it's going to be Saraqib, the international road. Basically, if we want to talk common sense, if they wanted to implement a new road from Al Hader to Hama, it will cost them very less than what they are doing right now. But it's more like a victory for them. They need this victory.
Okay, they need that victory, but I mean, Turkey and Russia are allies recently, and while securing those places in southern Idlib, Russia, backing the Assad regime, is actually risking Turkey's security.
Absolutely. Astana process, which is based on observing the de-escalation zones, is a kind of principle for identifying the policies in the region. But current situation directly threatens the security of Turkey, not only in terms of hard security concerns like having terror networks at the up north of Syria, but also soft threats like immigration, because Turkey cannot tolerate further immigration anymore. And the burden of this immigration is not only upon Turkey, but also the civilians themselves.
So Turkey says the military observation posts will remain there no matter what until a resolution is found. How sustainable it is?
I think this statement presents a kind of determination to the original text of Astana process, because the agreement indicated that these observation posts were to report what's going on in the region. And they are reporting right now. And they are not to combat with anybody, as you know. So if these observation posts has to leave the region, then there's no Astana process.
Yeah. So, Navvar, I think you're of the view that the latest attacks are targeting civilians and some rebel groups, but at the same time ignoring Al-Qaeda-linked extremists. Could you elaborate on that? Why?
Yeah, it's not only Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. People, when they talk about extremists in Idlib and this area, they mention Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is like the most famous group, and also they have the Salvation Government, which is the administration part of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. But still, in Idlib, we have several other factions like Huras al-Din, like Ansar al-Tawheed, like Taliban, Imam Ali bin Abi Talib. There is a lot of groups, subgroups in the area that is causing a lot of damage in regard of the security situation. So basically targeting these factions.
How do they differentiate them?
They differentiate them. Who? The Russian? They don't target them. So so basically they know exactly where they are located. For example, Huras al-Din is located in northern Latakia. During the operation in northern Latakia from the regime, Huras al-Din did not receive any kind of hit. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is located in some part of southern Aleppo.
So you say the Russians know their whereabouts and they're not targeting them on purpose?
It's serving them because just their presence is causing the security situation to be more fragile. These factions are, they issued several statements that they have a problem with the other Jabhat Tahrir al-Wataniya, which is like the ex-FSF faction. So basically their presence is serving the Russian in indirect way. So destroying them will like prevent the Russian from causing the situation inside Idlib from inside out to be a disaster. So they basically now the Russian are doing two kind of attack from outside, and depending on these extremists to conduct some kind of attack from inside.
Okay. At the same time, Turkey says it can, we just mentioned it, but it can't take any more refugees in. And Turkey seeks international assistance in this respect. But at the same time, Turkey also waits for Russia and the United States to fulfill its commitments in northern Syria. What is your take on that?
It's a clear picture of contradiction, especially for European Union. Let me tell you how. First, European Union pledged 3 billion euros, and later then will pledge another 3 billion. Okay, but they pledge it for the immigrants who are being harbored in Turkey.
Yes.
But what about
and it's
the
not
ones?
Enough.
Yeah, and what about the ones in Syria? If there's a project going to the circles of the European Union for the Syrians living in Syria as displaced people or individuals, then they reject it. So immigration is a kind of encouragement for the Syrian civilians by reaching Turkish borders, and by that way, it's a problem on Turkey. So Turkey does not want to accept more immigrants, but if EU wants to, provide assistance, they can also assist them in Syria too.
So I'm afraid we're out of time. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.
Thank you.